All right. Welcome to Be the Market Expert. I want to kick it off with this. And while this is not real estate related, I did think this was interesting. And so looking at this graph and ChatGPT use dropped off in the summer months. And so when we look at this thing, it's kind of interesting. We can see, right, these 97 billion tokens. And this is kind of how they look at it. They don't look at it as like usage time, they do it as tokens spent. And then they said it fell off 70% from June 4th to June 11th. And then when they released ChatGPT 5, people are like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm kind of interested in playing with this thing. And then it starts picking back up at the end of August. Well, when we look at this, this is school, right? When we look at this, they go through and they say, as reported, and when they look at this in their flagship chatbot, it dropped and says, based on a 2.5 million strong user base, peak usage coincide with the middle of finals season, which was May 27th, as users generated 97.4 billion tokens. And what's interesting is we kind of have these conversations and we start thinking about just with what ChatGPT does. And we've had these conversations, right? ChatGPT and being able to use these large language models or AI, if you will, right? When we look at this, the biggest thing is that people don't want to do their own research anymore, right? They want to say, like, here's the deal, right? Goldfish mentality. Let me put in my question, let me fire it off, and let's just go see what the answers are, right? And if there's enough people that they're landing on this place, then I'm good with it as well. It goes through and it says, ChatGPT, eat my homework. And it goes through and it looks at this thing. And what was interesting, and I had no clue, is that there was a bunch of research on Google, and you guys can go to this. You guys can go to trends and type in anything, and you'll see, like, if you want to look at what the trends are going in Colorado, you can go to trends and look up Colorado. If you want to go just real estate as a whole, real estate as a whole. But there's a thing called AI laptops, which I had no clue. I haven't done any research on this, but it says that this quadrupled from April to May. And so I don't know what chatbot is in this thing. And so it could be Google, it could be OpenAI, who knows what it looks like, but they're already pre-programming in this. This is the world that we're getting into, where people are just like, I don't want to do my own research. I just kind of want to go find it and see what happens. Kind of going more Colorado specific, guys. I did see this. This is maybe food for thought. And it says that they go through and says Denver Airport becomes the top hub for domestic flights. We look at this thing here, a couple highlights. Denver International Airport now offers 197 nonstop U.S. destinations. We have now surpassed Chicago and Dallas Fort Worth. And domestic flights now comprise of 94% of DIA's passenger traffic. Kind of thought that was a little bit interesting. And so if we were to kind of, scroll down a little bit somewhere in here, I promise you I read this earlier. Anyway, like, it wasn't huge numbers. Like, we're talking like 3 and 4 more than Chicago and to Dallas, which I can't find now for some reason. But anyways, so that was just kind of interesting. Just so if you guys know, and we want to be some of the most educated real estate agents, this is probably just one of those conversations, right? Like, hey, I just heard that we took over the number one spot for hubs for domestic flights. And we kind of have some of those conversations if we wanted to with our people. Let's fast forward over to real estate. So, why are mortgage rates so hard to predict? All right, so this is real estate news. And it says it's possible mortgage rates, which have recently hovered around 6.6%, will drop to 6%. One economist noted. Awesome. One economist out of thousands. And it says, but it could take a couple of years to get there. What in the world? Like, we look at this and it's like, that's not awesome. This is clickbait. And so when we're talking about awesome, rates are going to drop. We just don't know when. Awesome. Like, that's the best that anybody's crystal ball is working. And so your key points, it says, since mortgage rates are more contingent on the overall economy than real estate specifically, it is difficult to forecast. Cool. We all know this. It says this year's tariff wars and resulting concerns around inflation delayed what was expected to be a downward trend in mortgage rates. And it says a weakening labor market could send rates lower, but economists expect this to occur gradually. All right. So let's fast forward. So when we look at this, right, we deal in real estate and we have one of the highest price point ticket items that most Americans purchase in their lifetime. And we are the conduit for that. right? And so we are disproportionately affected, right? This is not an Amazon purchase where you go through and you're like, I want it on Prime. I want it between 4 and 8 a.m. tomorrow, and I'm willing to put it on $8 on my credit card, and we'll eat the interest as we go. No, this is in Denver. You're talking about a $600,000 price point. And so we do watch interest rates because that slows our market down disproportionately to most other items. So we go through, and I want to make sure that we all understand this, guys. This is the deal. It's inflation in the labor market. These are the conversations. These are the conversations that we need to be having with our people. When we're talking about the Fed, and we don't want to be those real estate agents that are putting out there, hey, the Fed's going to meet this month now. The Fed's going to meet this month and they're going to drop rates. My crystal ball is saying it, and interest rates are going to go down. That's just not how it works, right? So when we go through here, the Fed has a dual mandate. The Fed has a dual mandate, and most people believe like it's impossible to have this type of dual mandate. And the dual mandate says this: they want to make sure that the cost of goods does not rise, and they want to make sure that all Americans are employed. That's their job. Well, here's the deal. We think about interest rates and we think about the cost of money, and the cost of money directly tied to the cost of purchasing a home. And maybe selfish of us, or maybe it's just like, well, that's our job, so that's kind of what we think about. And yet, what interest rates are also tied to is expansion and the cost of widgets and the cost of labor. All right. So when we think about this, one of the things that the Fed has to control is making sure that the cost of your dollar can still purchase what the cost of your dollar should be able to purchase. And let's go back to 2021. Let's talk about real estate. We're all real estate agents here. 2021, the cost of your dollar when we were to go purchase real estate looked like this. You were in multiple offer situations. You were giving up all of your contingencies, right? You were waiving your inspection, you were waiving your appraisal, you were going through and you were giving up the naming rights of your firstborn child. And then on top of that, you were also going through and you were going $100,000 over asking. And think about how crazy that is, right? We were saying that the cost of this is $5, right? And someone was saying, awesome, I understand that the cost of that is $5. I am going to give you $7 today for this. Well, then it started the cycle where people were going over asking. They were going over asking. They were giving more money than what the value was because money was cheap. All right. So the cost of money was cheap. And so people were just throwing money out as quickly as possible. So they're saying, okay, we want to make sure that the cost of the dollar gets what the cost of the dollar should be able to go get. And on the other side of this teeter-totter, because this is what this thing is, they are saying, well, hey, also what we want to do is we want to make sure that Americans don't lose their jobs, that America is still employed, which we can all get behind, right? We don't want to see Americans lose their jobs. And so what this looks like now is that we have these two different things. We have the Fed saying, listen, we want to make sure that money's not flowing freely and that the cost of the dollar does what the cost of the dollar should be able to do. Because if we go through and we make the cost of borrowing money too cheap, people are just going to spend it freely. They're going to go out, they're just going to spend money. Well, at the same time, they said, we want to keep Americans employed. Well, see, this is hard because the only way to keep Americans employed is to be able to give the employer the ability to get resources and money to be able to spend it. Because listen, there's only two different ways that we can control costs, right? As a business owner, we have two different ways. One is leases, right? We have the ability to go through and to cut leases, to downsize, to do all these other things. Well, leases are tied to contracts, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years out. And so the other way is employment, right? The cost of an employee. So this is where it gets super hard. Now we're to this point to where we believe, if we were to look into our crystal ball, we do believe that the Fed is going to drop rates. And so what this looks like, and I say drop rates, drop the cost of money. What is the cost of money to banks going to look like, right? Because that's what the Fed does. They loan money to banks, banks loan it to us. And they talk about the spreads and the yields. And while we don't talk about that because that's above my pay grade, when we look at this, what this looks like is this. They're going to go through and they're going to say, we have to pick one of two things. We either have to control inflation or we have to keep Americans employed. They're going to go after keeping Americans employed. So what that looks like is they're going to lower rates. which means the cost of money is going to be more freely, which means inflation is probably going to go up. Inflation is probably going to go up over the next couple of months. But yet we want to keep Americans employed. And so here's the deal. We don't think this is in direct correlation to rates dropping as far as what banks are going to go do to allow the free money to flow through to the American people to go purchase real estate. What that's going to do, though, because the reason why they're not going to do this is because what happens? Well, if the money starts going freely, and when we start seeing this happen, people go to refinance. They refinance, and then they go and they pull the loan product. And what happens? The banks lose money. This is why it's not a one-to-one ratio. This is what we see. So this is the tug of war that they're going through. And when we're going through and we're looking at this, this is why we need to have the conversation. Because I think there's only two conversations that we need to be willing to have with our people right now. Firstly, why this is in 2008. So always your homework, go watch The Big Short. Go watch and go see Why the Big Short. We're never going to run into that ever again, right? We have some of the most well-qualified buyers that we have ever had. This is not go fog a mirror, go get a loan, go buy 3-4 houses, go leave them empty, zombie foreclosures, right? We'll never see that again. That's your first thing. We need to be able to understand why that will never happen again. Also, we need to know why, when the Fed starts lowering the cost of money, why that doesn't automatically impact real estate. All right, those are the two things. So as a real estate economist of choice, helping people with the largest financial decision the most Americans will have in their lifetime. Firstly, you can get some of that information from a movie and go cheat, go watch the movie. I'm telling you right now, go watch the movie. It will help you. And the second thing is this right here, because banks will lose money and the banks are not in the business to lose money. They're not the March of Dimes. They're not a nonprofit. They are a for-profit company, all of them, every last one of them is. And so if they were to do this, they'd start a chain reaction and they would lose a lot of money. Which brings us to here. So this just came out a couple minutes ago. This came out at 9:02 today. And so what this is saying is Trump might be declaring a national housing emergency. All right, first and foremost, no one knows what that means. All right, no one, right? We do not know what this means, but again, we're going to be the most educated real estate agents to at least have some opinions, at least have some talking points. And so let's just think about, if we were to fast forward this, where are we? We have an affordability issue in the United States. The affordability issue is stemming from a lot of different things, but we can pinpoint a couple, right? We can pinpoint where this thing kind of started from, when we made the cost of money basically free back in 2021, where you can go out and get money at 2%, 3%, right, somewhere in there, and people were just going out and rushing, getting money, and it raised prices really, really, really quickly. We're talking 10-12% appreciation year over year because the cost of money was so cheap. And then fast forward through this thing, then we pause the money. We raise the rates. We raise the rates quicker than we've ever raised them in our society. That was the big pumping of the brakes, right, back in 2022. 23 and 24, they stayed elevated, and 25, we're getting a little bit of this easing of rates. And so when we're looking at this, now we're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's the issue? What do we need to do? And so here's where, Trump has come out and he says, all right, national housing emergency. And if you guys were at the team rally, Ron challenged me in front of the group, which I welcome, challenged me all day long. And he said, well, hey, you know what, is this just, talking points for the administration, or does the administration really care? And I think the answer is yes to both. And so when we go through, what does this look like? Well, if we were to go to the very end of this, it says, we're trying to figure out what we can do, and we don't want to step into the business of state, counties, and municipal government. And he says, I think everything is on the table. Well, what's interesting, so if we go through here and we look at this, it says since Trump has taken office, he's done national states of emergencies 9 times, including this crime emergency. And so what's going on in DC right now, they got a lot of police on the streets, and they're going through and depending on where you get your news, you're probably hearing conflicting data, and that's not the time or the place for this right now. But if we look at it, this is just one of the examples. So who knows what this looks like? I believe, if I had my crystal ball, what does this look like? This looks like some way to be able to get around the Fed and to be able to push a magical button that says, hey, we don't need the Fed, we're going to do some stuff. And then there'll be some lawyers and some judges that are going to get in the middle of this and put some pauses on it. And then they're going to see, what do we need to do from here? But more to come. But just know, guys, like this is the latest and greatest news as of today. And we're going to see what this thing looks like as this unfolds. But here we go. Like, let's talk about, actually, I lied. I want to do this one first. Let's talk about Gen Z. Gen Z offers its thoughts on renter versus homeowner debate. All right, guys, here's the deal. Gen Z has entered into the space. All right, Gen Z has entered into the space. We're talking, we got boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. Here we go. All home buyers at this point, kind of, right? They're at least at the home buying age. And so when we look at this, as more than half of the respondents say that mortgage rates are a key to the home buying hurdle. So if we look through this, and let's just go through, they only surveyed 2,000 people. All right, so 2,000 people were surveyed. And so is this a big enough demographic of people to go through? I don't know. I don't even know where these people are found. But let's look at this. They're saying rising mortgage rates, escalating home prices, student loan debt, and career instability. So here are the four things that people are raising their hand. The younger generation underneath the millennials are raising their hand and saying, look, here are the four things that are stopping me from either renting or purchasing a home right now. We have rising rates, home prices, student loan debt, and I don't know about what my job's going to look like. And these are conversations that we should be going through and saying, okay, well, these are the real fears. So if these are the real fears, what kind of information can I put out there as the real estate economist of choice for people to come to me as the conduit to help them get closer to home affordability? So as I'm looking at this thing, I'm going to say to myself, okay, so rising mortgage rates, so rates, the cost of money, escalating home prices. Now, if I were to take those top two things, we're saying 57% of people said mortgage rates are too high. And then 52% said home prices are going up. All right, so more than half of the respondents, over the 2,000 people, so at least 1,000 plus on both of these said this is the issue. Well, if I'm going through here, well, how can I go and solve for these issues? And so rising mortgage rates, well, let's talk about new builds. And so I do got more new build stuff. But if we're looking at new builds, guys, they're not dependent on the Fed. They're not dependent on the Fed whatsoever. So what would it look like to go find my new build partners that are in the area that are offering these buy down rates and go through and say, listen, like, here's the deal. Here's a brand new home for this price point, which is X amount of dollars underneath the average price point in the Denver metro for a brand new home. Plus, here's your interest rate. Here are all the incentives, and start doing home tours on it. Guys, here's the deal. I want you guys to all just go on and just start Googling this kind of stuff, right? We've talked about this. Here's the deal. People are going through, they're going onto Google, they're going onto TikTok, they're going onto Instagram, they're finding their news station of choice, and they're not traditional news stations anymore. They're not going to CNN, they're not going to Fox, they're going to these other places to go get their information. Now, if we know that this is Gen Z raising their hand and saying, this is our struggle, please, somebody, please come and help us, what would it look like to be that person that is going out and finding the information for them and just educating them? These are our home buyers. We know where they're at. They're getting their information looking like this in 60-second blocks, right? They are sitting like this, getting information. They're not watching it with sound. So make sure you put captions on. And we're going through and we're putting some captions on, like, hey, just want to show you what, X amount of dollars in this neighborhood gets you. Plus, they're offering some great incentives. Reach out to me today and just start taking mind share. Guys, like, this is the point of these graphs. When we see stuff like this, especially when surveyed, whether it could be, boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and they're going through and they're saying, this is what we're struggling with. We need to go through and figure out, okay, well, how can we solve that? Where do we need to go through and get the information? And then how do we disseminate that information out to the masses? Talk one to many, right? And go through and figure out what platforms do I need on and how can I go in through and put out this information? So then we go through and let's talk about this. Home builder unsold completed inventory sits at a 16-year high. All right, guys, we just looked. Rising mortgage rates, escalating home prices, and guess what? Builders have an issue right now too. Builders are sitting at a 16-year high as housing market trying to find deals. So it says the number of unsold completed new single-family housing in July 2025 is at the highest level since July of 2009. Guys, we're talking pre-market crash. This is where we're at. So if we were to scroll through here, look at here's 2016, 58,000, 65, 65, 80, guys, with 121,000 unsold completed homes. And we don't see this too much in Colorado, right? In Colorado, there's a couple people that build on spec. We don't see a lot of spec builders. We typically see in Colorado where you go through, you hand your earnest money check in. They say, hey, we'll see you in 12 months from now. Come through. You picked out your dirt. You pointed to the picture. We're going to build this thing and we'll do this. And yet there's still spec builders out there. 121,000 guys. We looked last week, 2 weeks last week. I think it was last week. We talked about this and we went through Lennar, right? Lennar has a program right now to where you can go through and you can look at every completed home in the nation on their site, and they'll tell you what they think it will rent for, right? Like this is where these guys are getting to right now. They don't want to be caught holding the bag like this is 2008 ever again, right? And so you could go through and you could say, hey, look, this is my deal of the week brought to you by Lennar, and say, this is this home in this state. Did you still know that you can get a brand new build for $368,000? No, it's not in Colorado, it's in Florida. Here's the information on it. If you want to know the address and the city, send me a message. Right, guys? Like these are just the things that we're doing as the real estate economists of choice. We're coming through, we're educating, we're the conduit, right? We're solving problems. So we go through and we just look at this. Here's their graph. It says number of unsold completed homes for sale. Well, highest level of completed unsold homes since 2009. All right, 2009. Here's the issue, right? Housing crisis, The Big Short. Go watch it, right? So we're looking at this thing. It says we have this amount of unsold homes, 121,000. And we're looking through it. And guys, like, this is the big deal. How can we go through? And it says historically soft level, historically tight level, where everyone wants to live. Guys, we're going into the softness. The softness means they're going to have to offer incentives. What are they also going to do? In areas where they don't have inventory, they're going to slow it down. It's a spigot. They're going to start turning the flow down. Why? They're also not the March of Dimes. They're a for-profit company. They want to keep their prices elevated. They're not going to go through and build this. They have shareholders to answer to. So what they're going to start doing, you guys are going to start seeing this. You're going to start seeing less inventory coming online so they can keep their prices elevated. What this is also going to do is with less inventory and interest rates start coming down a little bit. And remember, builders aren't typically affected by the price of or the cost of money. What you're going to start to see is you're going to start to see resale homes come off the market a little bit quicker. Right? We're going to start to see resale homes with the cost of money coming down. We're going to see resale homes going off the market a little bit quicker. And so this is just going to put these resales in a better light because what they're going to do is they're going to have to compete now. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. And here you guys go. This is not where you guys want to be, but you're on one of the top. You're at 48% active listings for sale, 48% since July of 2019. Remember, 2019 we consider a normal market. That was the last normal market we have seen. 2020, global pandemic. 2021, super low interest rates. The money was free. 2022, we saw mid-year, they skyrocketed, the fastest we've ever seen interest rates go up. 23, 24, elevated. 25, we're seeing a little bit of softening, but we're in this weird market to where homes are sitting, but prices aren't going down. It's super odd where we're at. Like we have not been in a normal market since 2019. So when we look at this data and we say, okay, last normal market we have 48% more homes for sale in Denver than we did at that time point. Home prices aren't still coming down, right? We're not seeing people because here's also the deal. When we look at this thing, we start thinking about the equity these people have in their homes. They're not hurting. They also have jobs, right? This isn't 2008 where people are losing their jobs and they're having like short sales and foreclosures and you go drive down the street and you see 30 houses for sale. This is not that. what we're seeing is people say, you know what, I'll just rent it. I'll just take a HELOC out. I'll just go take the cash and I'll go buy a new house and we'll just see what happens here. And worst case scenario, we'll rent it later. And so this is a very, very interesting market that you guys are all participating in right now. And then when we go in, let's look at this. Let's look at Logan Moshami, lead analyst for Housing Wire. Don't forget, he's coming to Vail in a couple of weeks. I was going to say next month. It's a couple of weeks. I don't know if you guys are ready for that. But Logan Moshami from Housing Wire is going to be in Vail with us. He's going to be hanging out at the Rocky Mountain Summit. And so this is Friday. This is rear view facing data, which is where we get most of the good data. Right? It says, have lower mortgage rates altered the dynamic of the housing market based on our data? And it says, August has come to an end. And the results have surprised him. It says in recent years, they've typically sustained mortgage rates around 6% to the housing data. However, he knows a shift starting in mid-June. And this trend remained consistent over 2 months. And so let's look at the data. So housing data. So when we look at this thing, here we are. Let's look at our graph. We have 22% more inventory right now versus what we did in 2024. And here's the deal, guys. We're looking at this thing, and it did kind of slow down. I also think we're going to see this. We're going to see houses go expired. We're going to see buyers or sellers that put their home on the market that their agent said, hey, no big deal. This is what we're going to do. And they got some fatigue. And those deals have expired, right? They hit their 6 months. And we're going to start to see them kind of just falling off. They're going to fall off the board. And so what I do believe, though, is we will pass this 2019 level. I do. Again, I don't think the seasonality is necessarily dead, but what I do believe is more so than seasonality, we actually see the motivated moving. They're sitting on the fence. We actually have people sitting on the fence and they are waiting for those forever homes, right? This is a weird new phenomenon that we're seeing right now, guys, because the interest rates where they're at. People are not going out and just buying a house for the sake of buying a house. They're buying a house for the sake of this is my intent to live in this home and to die in it, which is kind of weird. Like we haven't seen this really and we're talking about younger generations that are doing this right now. The purchase application data is rising. We'll look at that. That's exciting. And yet when we're doing this, what they're also doing is they're waiting for the perfect home. And so I actually think that this is going to surpass. I don't think that we're going to dip. And again, I don't have a crystal ball, and anyone says they do is lying. But I do believe that this actually passes this line. So mark it now. We're recording it. You guys can bring this up later. So we look at it. We have higher interest rates, and yet we do have a lot of home inventory hitting the market. Your new listing data, we're right in line, right? This looks like 23 and 22 and 24. This is here. Remember what happened in 22? Interest rates were low. And then interest rates started going really, really high. And then people are like, my homes aren't selling. So we didn't put a whole lot of listings on the market. Then people got worn out because CNN and Fox told them, don't worry, rates are going to drop. Don't worry, rates are going to drop. Don't worry, and rates never dropped. We go through here and we look at price cut percentages. Here we are, guys. You guys are living again in unprecedented times. We know that historically speaking, until the last previous couple of years, homes dropped price cuts 1/3. 1/3 of all homes took a price cut in any given year. You guys are living at a time right now where 42% of all homes on the market are taking a price cut. And again, it's because they're looking at data that is not the right data. And as a real estate economist of choice, you guys got to get comfortable having the uncomfortable conversations with your sellers. Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, you've called me here today to get your home sold. And so what's important to you? Is it getting the most amount of money, or is it actually getting your house sold? Right? Because a lot of times they're going to say, you know what, we want to be able to sell my house for X amount of dollars. And it's like, okay, well, you want to be able to sell your house for X amount of dollars, but where are you finding the data that actually supports that? And they're going to say, well, back in 2021, it's like, well, we'll pump the brakes. We're not living in 2021. Let's look at what interest rates were. Let's look at the demand. We're sitting in a completely different market. And so for you wanting to go through and do this, I want that for you as well. But yet when we figure out what their motivations are, they have to be in a certain state because they're getting a new job. They want to be closer to the grandkids, right? We got to figure out what that motivation is and say, well, is that more important to you? Or is it, being able to beat the record this year for the highest priced home in the area? Because those don't align, right? And so let's get comfortable having the conversations, because what we do know is this. I was talking to my in-laws the other day, and they're thinking about moving. No, they're not thinking about. They're moving. My in-laws are moving. They're leaving. And they were talking about one of the houses that had been sitting in the market in their neighborhood for months. And I'm like, well, here's the deal. They're just dropping it incrementally. At this point, what happens? They've stigmatized the property, and they're saying, okay, well, we're just going to take a small price cut here and a small price cut here, and it doesn't work that way. And so we can look at these price cuts, but the only way to now unstigmatize that property is to do a massive price cut. You got to do something that says, no, we're serious. And so you got to do something pretty big and pretty drastic, and or take the home off the market, expire it, and then bring it back online in like a month and a half from now. And then it's a brand new listing, price it where it needs to be priced, and then move forward. We're not going to talk about the yields. We're not going to talk about the spreads, but purchase application data, guys, this is what should be getting you excited, unless you're not talking to your database. If you're not talking to your database, this should make you sick to your stomach. But here's the deal. We are in the winter of renewal. We are in a very exciting time. I want you guys to think about all the holidays that are coming up, natural touch points. You guys have, I get it. You guys are like, Charles, here's the deal. I don't want to be a salesperson. I'm not an MLM. I'm not selling Tupperware or candles or vitamins or any of that. Like, I don't want my people to look at me that way. And I respect that. But yeah, here's the deal. We got Thanksgiving coming up. We got Halloween. We have Christmas. We have Hanukkah. We have New Year's. We have so many different reasons to reach out to people and to restart the conversation. Football, right? Football season. Football's back. Thursday should be good, right? And so when we look at this, here's purchase application data. Guys, these are people raising their hands, talking to lenders. Mr. Lender, Mrs. Lender, I want to know what I qualify for. I think this is my year. I heard the Fed's going to drop rates here soon, and I want to be knowing where I'm at. And here's where this should make some people sick to their stomach. If you're not reaching out to your database, you better hope that the lender that they contacted is your buddy. Because if that lender's not your buddy, you know who they're going to give it to? They're going to give it to their buddy, which is a different real estate agent that is not you. And so we need to be the conduit. We need to be going through and getting into as many relationships as we possibly can. The whole game of our business is to be an emotional proximity to people when they're thinking about transacting business. And what this is telling me, let's blow this up for the people in the back. When we look at this, guys, here's 2024, here's 2025. We're seeing this spike. I thought we were in a seasonal market. I thought the real estate was seasonal and people start hibernating, right? Real estate agents go to sleep as jack-o'-lanterns and they wake up as Easter bunnies. And yet that's simply not the case anymore. People are moving because of motivations. They're waiting for the right home to come online. They're talking to lenders. They're getting prepared. They're sitting on the fence and waiting. They're scrolling Zillow. They're waiting for the right house to pop on. That's why we need to get back into relationship with our spheres. And so we're looking at this thing. More and more people are raising their hand in a seasonal time where we historically think that, look, guys, like, here's what 2024 looked like. During this time, we did have a weird blip, but it like disappeared right now. And it's staying significantly increased. So guys, here's my challenge to you guys. We got holidays coming up. We got different things like Breakfast with Santa is about to happen. I don't know if you guys saw the internal Facebook group, but Linda Arcos posted the other day that LHG is going to be doing a food drive. I don't know what's going on. Like my local church that I participate in on Sunday is doing a backpack drive. Guys, get involved in this kind of stuff. Get involved in this kind of stuff. Be the conduit. Say, listen, guys, I'm part of this thing, and I was thinking about you. Would anyone be interested in helping some children get fed during the holidays? Let me know. Right? Does anyone want to come to this Breakfast with Santa event? Right? Like, we're just going out, we're just offering opportunities, because here's the deal. We're humans. We're adults. What that looks like is we're getting into a relationship. I'm not saying who do you know is looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate that I can help today. And then what's going to happen is they're going to say, how's the real estate market? I heard that the Fed's doing this. I heard X, and you get to help educate. And here's the deal. The market's not awesome. Here's the deal. The market's not terrible. We don't know if the market's awesome or terrible, and yet we need to know why they're asking the question. Say, look, here's the deal. I super respect that question, and I would love to give you the right answer. If you don't mind me asking first, are you asking from the perspective of a buyer, a seller, or an investor? Because here's what's going to happen. They're going to tell you, oh, well, I'm thinking about buying a house. Oh, it's actually time for my mother-in-law is probably going to live with us because, guys, that's happening big time right now. We're actually going to move my mother-in-law in with us and we're going to probably sell her house. Then we know what position that we're playing from. Guys, here's the deal. It's a great time of year. Every year, this is the fun time to be a real estate agent because there's so many reasons to reach out to people. Your pending sales, guys, we're right in line, right? There's nothing crazy happening right now. We're right in line going through with what we typically see. We're still staying a little elevated. And again, rates are coming down. And so we could see a little bit more of a blip right here, which I'm going to call. Your weekly pending, still right in line, a little bit elevated. I think that'll pop up again. All right, so where are we? We're in jobs week, right? Because this is rearview facing data. So they're talking about the week that we're in. So it's jobs week is a significant one as the last jobs report before the Fed Reserve meets in September. And it says the only reason the Fed might not cut rates during this meeting is if the jobs report is impressive. Remember, dual mandate, keep inflation low, keep people employed. So if they go to where and they see that people are employed, they're not going to drop rates. But here's the deal. We don't believe this is going to happen. And again, it's super anti-American to root for this. But again, I'm going to say this like I tell you guys. People losing their jobs, as horrible as that is, and again, super anti-American. No one put that in your prayers. But our industry is actually positively impacted when that does happen. Like with all the stuff that like we get super disproportionately negatively impacted in, this is actually one of those things that actually helps our business. And again, we're not going to be rooting for this. And yet, if people start losing their jobs, what the Fed has to do is they have to stimulate the economy and they make money cheaper. And then keep in mind who's losing their jobs. It's typically the less affluent, and the more affluent actually go out and buy more homes. And so that's why we actually see real estate actually do way better when we are in these times of recessions. For the most part, like we see real estate do well, and so we're not going to cheer for that. But all signs are pointing to we're going to see a rate drop. It says we have 4 labor reports scheduled this week, along with the other economic data and statements from the Fed. And it says the Lisa Cook story could take some twists this week as well. So Lisa Cook, right? So when we go through, she is with the Fed, and they said that she committed loan fraud by having 2 properties that were both with primary mortgages, right? So she was able to get lower rates instead of having to put 20% down with higher rates. And so they're looking into this, and so we'll see what this is. But she's maintaining innocence, and it is going there. They are pushing to do some stuff with this. So we'll see what that looks like. But let's finish this with this. Here's your guys's interest rates. Now, again, this is only going to the 29th because a lot of people have been sleeping with Labor Day. So we don't have yesterday's data. We don't have today's data yet. And when we look at this thing, here's your 30-year. And here's your FHA, right? So there's your conforming, there's your FHA, that's your blue and your pink line. So if we go through and we look at this thing, you were at 649, let's call it 65 between friends on Friday, and then your FHA is, let's call it 63. Guys, like this doesn't look bad. And outside of this weird little blip right here, I like the way this graph looks. This is a good graph. This gives the American people, because we live in America, we're not in a third world country, that we have stability. We know that we can kind of forecast out. Guys, here's one of the reasons why we saw a lot of people pump the brakes is they didn't know what the cost of money was going to look like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days out. And keep in mind, homes are sitting longer. Most sellers become buyers. And so when we start looking at most sellers becoming buyers, what we see is if I'm about to sell my home, and it's going to take 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and I have to identify the home I'm going to buy before I lock in, and I know homes are going to sit, I'm going to wait. And if interest rates skyrocket, well, then my purchase power is getting dwarfed. And so when we start seeing this flat, this is awesome. This is great stuff, guys. Purchase application data is going up. Rates are kind of slowly going down at a steady level. This is all good stuff. This is the kind of stuff that excites us, especially the type of year that we're in. Season of renewal, guys. It's time to get back into relationship with our people, be the real estate economist of choice, know that all this good stuff is happening around us, and seeing how we can be the conduit to help people with the largest financial decision that they will make in their lives.